the purpose of tonight is to do really, like Al said, a map sort of what we're going to be covering. So we won't be going into any of this in an instructional way. We're just going to make sure that it's, we're going to go high level with the sort of concept of what we've put together, and then go into each of the areas that we're going to be paying attention to, and give you enough that if you're sufficiently interested, then let us know and we can follow up with it. So essentially what we've done is, when we both did our master practitioner 7 or 8 years ago, Adriana definitely went into what she would have labeled at the time as quantum healing. And so
she said it, Dan. She got it out, Dan, right there. Boom.
And so quantum healing, initially sort of is associated with people like Deepak Chopra and those types of healers who are really talking about what we would term as energy healing. But this is something different. This is just taking the principles of quantum physics and applying them to the body in the framework of healing. So I thought we should just start there, just because the word quantum carries with it. We're joking with Dan because as a scientist,
He wants to know we're keeping our quants.
Yeah. And it sounds a little pretentious, and I've seen the eye rolling. I'm not talking about you, Dan, but just like generally, there is definitely a sort of a misunderstanding of what it means, and I think a real misunderstanding of its use. Right? I think it has been used, sort of maybe flippantly when it shouldn't be. So the true definition of what quantum is just simply the fact that everything that is matter in the planet that we know of so far follows a certain set of rules, right? It follows the rules of physics. So, matter must touch matter in order to create energy, right? That there must be some sort of connection. And so from the atom level up, pretty much everything follows those rules. It's really, really understandable. So long as you have the brain capacity to understand how physics works, then you can really count on the world following those principles, okay? And most of our healing, most of our Western medicine is based on the Newtonian idea of physics. So it's basically based on this idea that there is matter. And so if you're going to heal something, there needs to be some effective way of actually changing matter, okay? So that's where we sort of begin. The problem with all of that is that what physicists started to uncover many, many, many years ago was that as soon as you go to the subatomic level, so as soon as you get smaller than the atom, things start to behave differently. So all of a sudden, things are not following the laws of physics. And it doesn't make any sense if you try to take the framework and the structure of how things are meant to work and apply it subatomically. It literally is just chaos. It doesn't work anymore. And so for the most part, what physicists were sort of doing was like we'll just worry about that later because it doesn't seem to change from the atom up, nothing changes. Right? So if from the atom up, everything still follows the rules of this Newtonian physics, then the fact that we kind of know that these subatomic particles are not following the world of physics, it doesn't really affect the ultimate outcome, right? So there was that outlook, and that's kind of currently what most modern medicine still follows. The quantum physicists were the people that were like, oh no, man. We're going in. We want to understand what is happening at this subatomic level. And if everything is made up of atoms and every atom that exists is made up of something subatomic, then we want to understand that more. And the study of quantum physics is just about going into those areas. So basically what they understood, and I'm going to explain this at the most comprehensive level, because, I'm not, we can't go more than that.
You're not going comprehensive. You just said you're going to get really comprehensive.
No.
Oh, that's what you just said.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean that. I mean,
the least comprehensive.
Yeah. The most basic.
Oh, most basic.
So what they discovered at a subatomic level is that there is actually far more space than there is matter. And that, of course, if there is more space than there is matter in those subatomic particles that make up matter, then it serves to prove that matter is actually more space than it is matter, which is very confusing to think about, right? So it's very confusing to think about the fact that like this table or the pavement out there is actually made of air more so than it is any sort of particles or material. And so what's happening is that there is a vibrational frequency. The reason that we experience things as matter, the fact that we touch them and we feel them and they can create, impact and all that kind of stuff, is because the vibrations that the particles are moving at is so fast that it doesn't actually allow our experience of it to be anything except matter, because there's constantly particle there because of the frequency with which it's spinning. And so because of all of this spinning, we experience things the way that we experience things. But if you look at that vibrational frequency, it's very, very, very changeable depending on all of these external effects. And so the study of quantum physics just says, okay, wait a minute, if we're actually made up of energy, not of matter, wouldn't it be interesting if we started to try and affect healing through those energetic frequencies rather than trying to affect the material, the particle? And so that's really what we're looking at when we're talking about quantum healing, is how do we actually get into that energetic force rather than the particle matter force. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Again, at the most basic level, that's why energy and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
He said it made sense to him.
Oh, you good? You have a question?
No. My undergrad degree was in physics, so I'm with you.
Right on.
Good. I'm glad. Okay, so I'm explaining it that way just so that we have a common understanding of where we're going with this, okay? So that is so incredibly incomplete, but it is enough just to sort of understand that we're talking about subatomic particles whenever we're talking about quantum, okay? And then it explodes into the world of quantum healing and everything else, which is like the energy and the chakras and how emotions and how our ideas of ourselves and how our neurology is affected. And that's where we get into the 5 bodies of health.
I wish when I fell off my motorcycle, I had landed in the space inside the pavement particles.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is the map of what we're doing. So we're going to talk about quantum medicine. So just how this has actually gone from that basic idea into a whole world of healing that is very measurable, very well researched, in the field of health and wellness, and of course everything else. We're also going to go into integrative health, which Al was just referring to, which means this like really enormous sort of aspects of health that come from everywhere, right? These universal look at health in terms of how ancient healing practices worked, how people have tapped into sources of change that come from our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our mind. So that whole mind-body connection is being taken into consideration with integrative medicine. Integrative medicine does not at all disregard the importance of functional medicine. Right. So functional medicine is the medicine that addresses the broken bones and all of this stuff that can go wrong with the physical body. And there is no dismissal of that. There is absolutely no sense of like this replacing medicine in any way.
It doesn't.
It's just an additional. It's basically, it's not saying Western medicine is wrong and they're doing it wrong. Although, in some cases they do tend to be doing more harm than good. Right. We all know that. But what they're saying is that it's just incomplete. It's just simply incomplete. So it is one branch of work. And what is so frustrating to most integrative health practitioners or doctors is that functional medicine really tends to focus, of course, on healing what is broken, right? Fixing the illness. It's really, really, really avoiding preventative medicine and health generally, right? It's not about health. It's about unhealth. And so integrative medicine goes out to change that so that the focus really is creating health within and all of the different ways to do that.
So, Dr. Wheel actually talks about all the departments of injuries and broken parts and illnesses. There are no departments of health, no departments of wellness. They're all departments of cancer or heart disease or whatever, cardiology. There's no departments of health. Per se.
And in each of those areas, by the way, he also is really excited because in each of those areas, so there is a gastrologist, who will also be trained as an integrative medicine doctor and have that as a specialty, right? So if you're really interested in finding an integrative medicine doctor and you have a specific area that you need them to specialize in, it's available. You know, somewhere in the world, there's going to be a clinic or you know, an availability to someone like that, which is exciting. Okay, but what it takes into consideration, so yes, functional medicine for sure, but we're not touching that because we are not doctors, and why would we? It takes into consideration nutrition. So a lot of nutrition, sort of new thinking around nutrition, neuronutrition. So really understanding how what we put into our body is affecting not only our physical body, but our thinking and our mental capacity.
And the stress on the body. Digestion, next to cell recreation, digestion is the #1 use of energy in your body. So when you're eating food that requires a ton of energy to digest, it's a huge burden on your body.
Yeah. Certainly naturopathy, epigenetics is a huge element here. Mental and emotional stresses, right? So this is where we look at German new medicine. NLP fits right into this category, right? So if you were working with a practitioner who you would go to somebody like us to specifically address some of the things that may be connected to their illness. So this is where we really get sort of braided into where we fit if we're working with somebody who does need a medical doctor, which of course is way out of the scope of us and most people here. So how we fit in with that kind of work. It also takes into consideration neuroplasticity, and coming downward from mental and emotional health would be stress and chronic illness and trauma and immune function, nervous system, all of that kind of stuff and how it can be affected. But it comes down in a downward causation. So the way that we have really encapsulated a lot of this is going to Rupert Sheldrake's work, which we've mentioned before here, the 5 bodies of health. So the 5 bodies of health is a really, really inclusive way to address all of these things at once. So just quickly, I'm not going to go into this, but just really quickly for those that haven't heard it before, the 5 bodies of health is a way to be able to approach the person holistically. So at the first body of health is your physical being, right? So if you have a physical problem, if you've broken your wrist, you best go to a doctor who knows how to put bones together. Right? It's not going to serve you particularly well at that point to go to like a spiritual leader. I mean, it might, but if you wanted something really efficient and useful, you could go to somebody who's really going to be able to fix the body, the physical body. And this is using Newtonian physics, right? Like actually going into the body and healing. The second body of health is the energetic body. So this is where we get into, it is still associated with the person and it is still universal. So just as like every human being tends to have their knees in the same place and their nose in the same place, and that is very predictable as a doctor where the parts of the body are, with this second body, the vital body or the energy body, this is also universal in that same way. So this is things like acupuncture, right? So even though now we're outside of Newtonian physics, we are no longer talking about matter touching matter. Now we're talking about like energetic connections, however that works. This is like there's a spot in the knee that universally seems to be connected to the functioning of the liver, right? So there's nothing going on Newtonian there, but it does seem to be consistent for most human beings, right? So these are things like acupuncture, homeopathy, acupressure, osteo, physio, Reiki,
tapping, EFT.
all of those things that really get into this vital body health, where you're working with energetic flows, you're working with chakras and meridians and all that kind of stuff, that work is all very, very, very complementary to whatever else is going on. So if you happen to have a vital body issue, so if what's going wrong with your system is that there is like a block or something energetically that's going on, it would be really well served to go to somebody who works at that level. Okay, so it would be really useful to go to somebody who understands those things, who knows the meridians of the body, who goes to somebody who does body work, who can who has, you know, a lot of experience. Chinese medicine is all vital body stuff. Okay, somebody who makes, yeah.
When my brother, my second oldest brother, every spring he would have episodes of what's called TGM, trigeminal, and I forget the rest of the name of the disease, but it's a nervous disorder. And for him at that period, he couldn't even touch his beard. It would put shooting pains through his head. He would regularly check himself into Emerge. And then one night in Emerge, he met a young intern who knew what he was going through. The other doctors in the hospital didn't know what he was going through. And this young doctor intern told him exactly what he has. And he diagnosed a drug, gave my brother a drug called Tagertol. And Tagertol took the pain away. Dan's shaking his head, he knows what it is, but it's also a very, very heavy hitting drug. That's a serious drug to take. So that went on for a couple of years, and then the Tagertol didn't seem to be work. And my brother, so that's the first level healing, right? That's what Tara was talking about, the physical body, chemicals on body. Then down the road, he went to acupuncture, and that relieved the trigeminal disorder right away. So when he went to the next level of healing, to this energy level, it released it right away.
Yeah. So the third body of health is mental and emotional. So primarily mental. So this is working with the mind. Okay, so this is where this is where NLP fits in. This is where hypnosis. This is where all of the stuff where we sort of specialize and work is in the mind, right? So now this is about the beliefs. So this is the beliefs about the body. And so when somebody has a certain set of beliefs about their identity, about themselves, about their illness, about their health, about their unhealth, you know, whatever it is, this is where, you know, a lot of, pain is going to be addressed, certainly chronic illness, that type of thing. And so when you have something going wrong, and the reason things are going wrong is because there's a mind problem, then you got to find somebody, or you would be best served to find somebody who can work at that level. And then the fourth body is
let me jump in. That same brother never realized, he never got evolved enough to know that it was actually thoughts and feeling that were triggering this nervous disorder. And it happened the same time every year, because he was a snowmobile dealer and he'd made all his money and he was transitioning into summer. And it was the beginning of the burn. By the end of summer, he'd be 500K in the red, and his brain just started focusing on, how do I get through the summer? And it wasn't as soon as he retired, he didn't have any springtime issues anymore, because he didn't go down that rabbit hole of whatever that anxiety was, massive anxiety.
And then the fourth body of health is spiritual. So fourth body of health is definitely something that, you know, you're going to go to a spiritual leader, somebody who has, I would say that sometimes timeline therapy can go there for people. There is the possibility. For some people, it stays really mind based. For some people, it gets really spiritual.
Meditation.
Core transformation for sure is working up there in the spiritual level for most people. Wholeness, meditation. So all of these types of things, and actual spiritual practice, right? This is where, you know, we have endless evidence that people who have a belief in something bigger than themselves and a higher power have really, really an easier time being able to accept and believe in those things that are going to help them heal, right? So any sort of belief in a higher power, whether it be, you know, really classically spiritual in a faith-based sort of idea of belief, or if it's something very individual. So that's something that we don't teach that really, you know, if you do core transformation or wholeness, we go there a little bit, but that isn't really our area. That's where I would, you know, send somebody to a spiritual leader. And then the fifth body is the bliss body. This I don't know much about. This is like the enlightened, you know, this is the stuff people talk about when they have gotten to be absolute masters at meditation, and they can reach those places of absolute bliss where they cease to be even identify as their body anymore, right? So this is the connection. This is no longer, so where the physical body, the vital body, and certainly the mind are very centric to your actual being. The spiritual body tends to be beyond that, right? Now we're sort of really kind of leaving the physical body and the physical realm of being and going into the spiritual world. Bliss is just out there. This is just that whole connection with oneness. I don't know very much about it. I'd like to, and I will one day, but at this point, if somebody is certain that their ailment exists in that realm, then they need to, I don't know, like
go see an ayahuasca guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think ayahuasca probably is one of those.
I don't know. Psychedelic, I don't know enough about it.
The message, though, is that if you're here to learn about that, you're in the wrong place. So what's really cool about the 5 bodies of health is that there cannot be upward causation, but there can be and is, and as a pretty hard, fast rule, there is downward causation. So what that means is that if, say, we have a lot of evidence that when people have knee problems, or if they have mobility issues, that very often it's associated with, either apprehension or unknown or uncertainty or, whatever.
Stopping their forward mobility.
Yeah, something being in their way, that kind of thing. You can go to somebody who's going to fix the physical knee, right? You could go get surgery, you could take steroids, you could do whatever people do for knees and other things. And that may fix the knee, but what I believe is that it will not be permanent. And what the literature tells us and the research tells us is it's unlikely to be a permanent solution. And it's not getting rid of the root problem, right? The problem, usually the person isn't going to have the thing fixed and then suddenly be like free and able to get past their issues. However, if you go up to that 3rd level, so say it was a mind ailment, you will very, very, very often have you resolve the emotional and mental stuff that needs to be resolved. And there will be a downward causation in that it will manifest through those 2nd level and the 1st level into the knee. And that's why you experience healing that way. That's why there is this relationship between, and it's not always, we don't have a predictable model, whether it's going to be like a radical healing that happens, in a moment or overnight, or whether there's going to be a manifestation that's going to involve a process of time, right? Whether there's going to be some sort of lag between the resolution and when the actual physical manifestation of healing happens.
Dr. Wheel told this exact story. He was at a conference to speak. And the day before he went on stage, he started getting excruciating pain in his left knee. And by the time he was supposed to go on stage, they had to get a wheelchair for him. He could not walk. So he goes on stage, he's in a wheelchair. After the show is over, he goes to see a doctor, a knee specialist. Doctor told him that part of his meniscus was all shattered in pieces, that they'd have to operate and replace knee parts. And he took that opinion, but then he went and found one of, I guess in his, he runs with a pretty big gang. He went and found what we would call a 3rd pillar or a thoughts feeling healer, and healed the emotional stress that was causing the knee pain. Now, he said, I still had broken pieces in my knee, but I was pain free. He said I could move. I had mobility again. And so he said that exact example. It was beautiful.
Yeah. So here's the long and the short of it. We don't deal with the physical stuff very much because we are certainly not trained to do so.
She doesn't. I do.
Neither Al nor myself
I
went
do
to
all
medical
the time.
school. We didn't go to nutrition school. We didn't go to any, body work. We don't do that stuff. We learn all sorts of stuff, and we sometimes dabble where we probably shouldn't.
I'm smiling like an asshole here because every client who has a physical problem, I take a run at it.
Yeah.
First, I say, what can I lose? I'm doing NLP. I can't hurt them.
Just our business license.
No, I don't tell them I can heal them. I just do a technique and ask them, how's your pain now?
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is that we don't prescribe.
Oh, no.
We don't deal with the physical healing. We never, ever deal with like, hey, try this exercise in your physical body, it will help, or this medicine, we don't touch that. That is not where we work, okay? We don't work really at the 4th level. Neither one of us are spiritual leaders, and we certainly don't.
But we do core transformation and wholeness.
Yeah. So let me just finish.
Okay.
So we don't work primarily in the 4th level. We're not.
I told you to interrupt you.
And we certainly don't even touch that. Well, we do. If people get there, it's awesome, and if we get there, it's awesome. But we don't do anything instructional at the 5th level. where we work is in very, very, I would say, 60 or 70% of what we do is in the mind level, in that third level. And then we're really starting to learn a lot. Both of us are starting to learn a lot about that second level, that vital body level, and learning more and more and more about the energetic possibilities and capacities and everything else around healing. What happens is that there is this sort of trickle effect, right? So even while we stay in our lane, and it's really important, it's so important that we leave people to their area of expertise and we don't ever confuse our clients about what we do, right? I would never, every once in a while we get people come, I get a referral and someone will say, I've heard you can heal this X condition.
Yes, I can.
And it's really important to point out to them that, like, no, actually, I can't do that and I don't do that. But I can help you with a lot of the stress that goes along with it and the emotional stuff that may well contribute to your, healing and effective that could be, right? So
I could take credit for healing probably 10 cases of IBS.
Yeah.
Because 10 of my clients came in with significant IBS. As soon as we cleared their trauma, the IBS went away.
And in our head, we
heal IBS.
Yeah, we know that, right? We'll talk to each other about what we think we're healing, but it's not.
And we don't know if it's happening.
So yeah, so where we work is second and third, and then sometimes it goes up into the fourth, which is cool, and I feel fairly confident being able to handle that. And often, it trickles down into that first layer.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we teach the 3 days of healing on the master practitioner, that's where we're really working, is we're really looking at, like, how is it that we're connecting the stuff that we do with NLP, with timeline therapy, with core transformation, with all of the different modalities. Al's going to bring in a little bit of Wim Hof, and, like some of the things that we've picked up that we know and we have seen through the work with our clients contributes to really, really profound lasting healing. And so we've weaved them together. So I'm just going to go through this. Let me just go through it.
What do you think the chance of that?
I'm just going to give the overview of what we're doing, and then we can sort of have some discussions where people are interested about what we're going to do. Okay. So
Can I say one thing just before you start?
Yes.
I had one client who was rigorously meditating, and she actually did a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And when I met her, she was heavily traumatized. And when we cleared her trauma, which is a level 3 healing or a pillar 3 healing, I think she's actually transcended into high level 4 and perhaps 5 sometime. Mm-hmm. She is a totally different person. We talk about vibrational levels as if I know what that means, but you're around her, she vibrates at a whole new level. And she talks about being in this state. She uses the bliss word, and when you're around her, you feel it. You feel like that this person is sort of floats in and out ethereally. But it's the only client who's done that, and she was already committed to the path before I met her, but was holding her back was her trauma. When we released the trauma, I think the path opened for her, and she's so dedicated to the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like anecdotally, we've done some amazing things. We have people that have gotten through stage 4 cancer doing work with us. We have people that have healed all sorts of stuff, but it's still,
we can't take credit for it.
Yeah, we certainly can't take credit for it, and it's based on where the person is in their own journey, where we come in, right? So we act sort of as a guide to wherever they are and help to focus in those areas. Okay, so this is how it's going to go. So we're going to begin just with the understanding of Western medicine and getting outside of it. So really just looking at the mind-body connection. And this is so important because we all kind of know it, right? We've heard about the placebo effect. We've heard about all these cases. We could just sit here and talk for days about, miracle recoveries and all that kind of stuff. And so we get it to a certain degree that there is this mind-body thing, right? Forever. And people always have, right? For as long as there's been human beings, there have been miracles, and there have been people who have had profound healing based on some sort of emotional, rebirth or release or whatever happens. So we're more interested in understanding theoretically how that really happens. The research, so we want you guys to be armed with the research, because if you, like us, and most of the people that we sort of draw to us, I hope I'm not insulting anyone here, but we don't have a ton of people who come to us specifically to learn NLP for like business success and making more money, or like more practical uses of like NLP, and that most of the people that we work with,
nobody comes to us to golf better.
Yeah.
Unless
they're hurt and they can't.
Yeah. No, yeah, and they want to heal. Well, we can't say heal.
Yeah. So where we're focused is using this in a way where we can contribute to people's well-being. And so it's really, really good for you to know the research behind this. Not only do you need to know it yourself, just so you've got it, so that it's, it's stuff that you can bring to clients. You guys all know the story of the 4-minute mile, right? Roger, somebody.
Bannister.
And there was, for years and years and years and years, there was nobody could do a mile under 4 minutes. And that was just, I don't know how long, for a century
Forever.
they had been trying to. And then all of a sudden, Roger, what's his face,
Bannister.
did it. Roger Bannister did it. And that same year, within the 12 months of him doing it, there were 34 other people that did it. That is so, like, to dismiss that, for people to just be like, oh, that's weird. Like, that's not just weird, man. That is like so unbelievably important for us to understand about the capacity of the human mind, right? So as long as people thought it wasn't possible, they just couldn't do it. The greatest athletes in the world, in the best condition that a human being could not do it. As soon as that was broken, as soon as the mind realized that it was possible to do, it was like bam, 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 they could do it, right? That's huge. And when you have clients who, whether they're overcoming anxiety, whether they're overcoming chronic pain, whether they have, whatever it is that they're struggling through, if you can relay to them, if they can hear a story, like a narrative, a story of somebody else who was in their position, who conquered it, who was able to get back to health, who was able to get into a place of thriving health again, like that 4-minute mile, it is going to give them so much. And we have this documented so well medically that that's what will inspire them. You will have overnight changes for people who believe all of a sudden, because, and I don't mean to, I'm going to have to keep apologizing if we're, poo-pooing on doctors, but it is too common that we hear a doctor will give a diagnosis and then say, chances are you have you have a 90% chance of dying. Well, that still means you had 10% chance of living. And not a lot of doctors focus on that, right? They're not trained to. They're trained to deal with the ailment. They're not trained to deal with the 10% of the outliers who were able to overcome this. And we're suggesting that is exactly your job as a practitioner. And again, whether it's a physical ailment or anything else, whatever it is, if you can guide them to this place where they can see and really, really recognize how possible it is, you just by doing that. And so that's what we're going to spend a lot of time doing at the front end of this, is just loading you with that all of the stuff that you need to be able to do that.
A great point of reference for this, and outside of what we do, is Dr. Perlmutter, and his book is called Power Up the Brain. And he became as an oncologist, he was so fascinated by people getting the same diagnosis and having radically different outcomes. So two semi-identical, men, 5'8", 200 pounds, both get a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, get told you have 90 days, get your affairs in order. 90 days later, one's dead and the other one is in total remission. And he became so fascinated by this, he started researching all sorts of healing techniques, and he hooked up with an anthropologist who was studying shamanic tradition. And that's where the book starts. And it's a fabulous read into hard medical science. They're working with physicists, and they're working with this anthropologist who is studying the shamanic phenomenons. It's called Power Up Your Brain. It's a great sort of do-do-do-do book.
So Al and I are doing a lot of work in that area to bring that through, and then we bring it into the framework of NLP and how you might go about it. So, we have all these stories. We have all these amazing stories that, it's just wildly entertaining to hear all this stuff. And then sort of knitting it in with how we would use the tools that you guys all have, that you have learned through your practitioner and PACE and soon to be, well, those of you that are doing Master Prac, but the skills that you have and how you could apply them, and we'll bring it into a really applicable way of using that. Then we'll go to the 5 bodies of health, which we already explained. Then we're going to go into German New Medicine. So can you just put your hand up if you're already familiar with German New Medicine? Okay, so a little bit only. Okay, and all of the people whose faces we can't see. Sue, is. Yeah? Okay. All right. So German New Medicine, this is the most abbreviated version, but it's really, really fascinating. This is the study, a guy named Dr. Hammer, who is now passed away. He passed away in 1997, I think. Yeah.
Just a couple of years ago.
Oh,
Anyways.
Anyway, he's not that historical. He's fairly recent.
Yeah.
And he had a terrible, tragic story where his son was murdered. His young, teenage son was murdered, and he, about 14 months later, he was diagnosed with cancer. And he got through it. And the way that he got through it was to find peace around the death of his son. And so it's this really, big sort of personal, emotional story about his own path to healing. But he was a doctor, and what he started noticing was that as he just conversationally started talking to his patients, he started asking them, because he was curious about this connection. He wondered if it didn't, and he suspected that his son's death was directly connected to the cancer that he suffered from 14 months later. And so when he started talking to his own patients, he started realizing that there seemed to be this consistent correlation between something traumatic, and traumatic being relative to the person, right? In sort of 12 to 24 months. Yeah, cool. Wait, Dan, what are you referring to?
Sorry.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so in the 12 to 24 months prior to the onset of the cancer, there was consistently some sort of traumatic event. And so he just got all ramped up with this, and he went for it. And he started he was working on an oncology ward, and he started talking to hundreds and hundreds and thousands of patients. And what he started to recognize was that his hypothesis was really, really, really accurate. And then he came up with what you will learn about if you're doing this, is that there is this cycle. So there's this sort of like something happens, and then there is a process of when the actual damage is being done, when the body is having a response to whatever that trauma was. And it kind of goes along. And then when there's something called a healing crisis, and so when there is a point of healing, whether it's conscious or unconscious, at that healing point is usually when you start to actually feel symptoms, because what the body does is it turns around and it starts to try and repair the damage that was done. And that's when things go really awry in the body for a period of time. That healing crisis tends to be when everyone freaks out. That's when the symptoms get really severe. That maybe when, even like a heart attack would happen or something like that. If you make it through this healing crisis, chances are the body will very naturally heal. And so if you follow the healing crisis and let it organically and naturally go through the process of healing, you'll come back to a place of, emotional and physical wellness. So Dr. Hammer started doing two things. First of all, he started isolating what was happening. So what was actually happening neurologically, and he was connecting it to how the body responded. So he got to the point, and again, we have this all really, really comprehensive, awesome understanding of all of this. He could identify the type of trauma, and he could associate that to how the body responds instinctively. Our reptilian brain instinctively responds to that type of trauma. So if it's a attachment trauma, there's going to be a specific way that the body responds to attachment trauma. If there's a loss trauma, if there's if you feel as though your life is threatened, yep, that's when you actually respond with your lungs, which is really, really interesting in a world where the most prominent secondary cancer is lung cancer in people who don't smoke and haven't smoked. It's usually lung cancer. And guess what happens when somebody gets diagnosed with their first cancer? They get this trauma of their life's about to end, which starts the cancer in the lungs. And so, there isn't such thing as metastasizing. That's not a thing. They haven't ever proven how that works, right? And yet they just sort of say that the cancer metastasizes. And yet that's a completely fictional idea. They just assume. And yet there is this very, very interesting way of looking at how these different cancers form once the whole thing begins. Anyway, so I'm not going to go too far into it. What is most interesting about Dr. Hammer is that he ended up with a clinic. He has He did research. He had 6,000 patients who had stage 4 cancer, and he didn't treat the cancer. He treated the emotional healing of the trauma. And of those,
and he was running CT scans on all of them regularly.
He had all their permission. They all agreed to do this. He had extraordinary team working with him. And of those 6,000, and I forget the number, but it's 5,000 and something, 5,700 of them or something. It's phenomenal. Recovered from stage 4 cancer doing this. But 300 of them died. And my numbers could be wrong, guys. I don't know those numbers, but it is really phenomenal, the numbers. He was disbarred, disbarred, that's a lawyer. Stripped of his medical license. He was exiled. He was taken to court. They put him in jail. They threw him in jail. He actually died in exile. He was they brought him, and what was amazing, when he was in court, so they charged him with all sorts of egregious medical things. And when he was in court, he said to them, "I will prove to you that I have found something that is really important to pay attention to." And he said, "Bring me, pick, I don't know how many, 12 random scans of people's brains who currently have cancer." Okay. And so they went out and did this. So they got 12 scans of brains of people who had cancer. And he looked at the brains, and where he saw the damage in the brains, he was able to look at the brain scan and say, this person here has testicular cancer. This person here has breast cancer. This person has liver cancer. And he went through every one of them, and he was deadly accurate. He was absolutely bang on in each of these cases, because he had figured out this link between the neurological trauma and how the body responds to it. And still, it was completely dismissed, and he was thrown. He was just left. He died. Quite unhappy.
It's interesting. So we're not doctors again, right? So when we're looking at NLP, we look at that model of medicine and say, okay, how best can we support clients who are in a life-threatening, like stage 4 cancer, understanding the model? So when Angela was working with us, she was actually on PACE course with us when she started feeling lethargy. She felt very lethargic, and she went almost a month later, and it was found that she had a bleeding tumor in her intestinal tract. And that would be in the cycle of German New Medicine, that fits into very clear criteria in one phase. And then she got the full diagnosis on January 6th that she had stage 4 cancer, and she was operated on. So in working with her prior to January, I looked for the traumas related to that earlier, and we cleared the trauma. She was in a very, very, very physical, emotionally abusive marriage and went through a divorce in a very messy, very public divorce. And when we cleared that, she started healing, and then we supported her after her surgery and through her 6 rounds of chemotherapy. And on June 22nd of the same year, she was diagnosed as being cancer-free. And she stayed that way now for 4 years. Every June, she goes back for her check-in. So we use the German New Medicine model to understand how we might support a client by getting them in the most resourceful, most energy, most positive, energetic place they can be.
Yeah. So just to be clear, we don't use, obviously, we don't use this in any unethical way. We don't ever presume to, do, but if somebody does come, and he went beyond that. So his primary work was with cancer, but he also, because he knew of these connections, because he knew that like when a mother has a separation trauma with her child or something, how that's going to manifest. Sometimes it doesn't actually get to cancerous or anything, but somebody might have like a rash that keeps showing up somewhere, or there may be, degeneration in certain areas and everything else. And so it's just really, really useful to understand this at a level where, as an NLP practitioner, if your client comes to you and just, which there happens, like 2 of them today, who are just like autoimmune, I don't know what it could possibly be, but I'd really like to work with my 20 years of autoimmune stuff, has no idea where to start. It's a good guide for me to be able to use all the tools, have a sense of, okay, here's some things that may be connected through these very, very interesting ways that people have found it, to be able to direct the work. And then, of course, what they do with it, once you actually go into, so if it was, say, like a self-devaluation that is consistent with that particular disease, it's going to be really helpful for me to maybe explore a little bit their sense of value of themselves and make sure that's where I'm focused and paying attention and release and let go of anything there, right?
My healing of the osteoarthritis started with German new medicine and what it says about osteoarthritis and inflammatory ailments in general, osteoarthritis in particular, and its restriction of forward movement. So what is it in your life that's restricting your forward movement? And then it gets into dominant and non-dominant. Yeah.
It's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my knee's healed and I still have you. How'd that work?
So that's what we're going to do. We'll spend one afternoon looking at German new medicine, and it's just yours to have. We don't do a very deep dive into it. We do, it'll be 4 or 5 hours of German new medicine, which allows us to go into it enough where you'll have an understanding of it. And then it would be up to you if you decided to go further. There's a German New Medicine Institute in Toronto that's really, really, really doing amazing work. They're all over the world.
And the trainings are extensive and detailed.
Yeah. But we've certainly found it useful over the last and had good success with it. Then we're going to spend some time looking at Bruce Lipton's work. Not just Bruce Lipton, like epigenetics. Okay, so looking at this whole concept of, yes, there is genetic information. There is absolutely information in the DNA that holds all sorts of information that makes us who we are. But the environment is really the strongest determiner of how that is actually going to manifest into your health or your unhealth. And so Bruce Lipton has a book called Biology of Belief. We recommend everybody read it because it's just so cool and important. So we'll spend quite a bit of time just going into that. And again, nobody, I don't know that anybody, if you guys have watched Bruce Lipton, he's just like so passionate about how our beliefs determine our biology. And it's just so true. And it's so wonderful. And so we have lots of material that we'll bring into that aspect of it. And
he's a very interesting, to me, I find him interesting because he was so scientific when he was a stem cell researcher. And then when he started making the transition and started to understand the effects of epigenetics, he actually has a whole chapter in Biology of Belief talking about spirituality. Because prior to that, he was just cut and dry. If I can't touch it, if I can't touch it and hold it, it doesn't exist. It's not real. And so he transformed. Interestingly enough, Gabor Mate is in the same camp. Gabor Mate, though, the doctor from Vancouver who created a process called compassionate inquiry, who is all about addictions. His focus is addictions and all linking them back to traumas. And he talks extensively about even pre-birth stressors shutting down certain pathways that then make the person far more susceptible late in life to be addicted. And it's interesting because there's another quite famous addiction doctor, Stanton Peele, who calls epigenetics hogwash. So here we have two people, leading experts in addictions. One, Gabor Mate, who's gentle and kind, and the other guy, Stanton Peele, who doesn't agree with the 12-step program, but he's created his own program called the Life Process Program that you go through for years. So it's interesting. But yeah, Gabor Mate, Andrew Weil, they all believe in epigenetics.
We may take, if we have time, we may spend a little bit of time with like neuronutrition, just because it's really interesting. It won't be long, and we are not experts.
What do you mean by that?
But it's really interesting. Just I've taken some like quantum nutrition stuff where we're just looking at looking at how food really affects us beyond just the biology of the food. It's just really interesting. We may drop that in for an hour and just take a look at it, or at least give you a sense of where you could look further if you're interested in it. It's very interesting though.
I hate this study because what's about to happen for me here shortly is I'm going to give up coffee and switch to matcha tea. And it's through this shit. You're not, but you're studying it, and I'm reading your books vicariously, and the literature says I have to give up coffee.
He does, but I don't. Do you guys know that there's actually a gene? No, chocolate's perfect. Yeah. Dark chocolate, it's perfect. Do you know that there's actually two different genetic expressions? So there's two different genes that cause you to metabolize caffeine differently. So the world is actually divided. It's the most fascinating thing. I used to laugh my head off. I apologize if I've already told you guys this. Some of you I have, but it was so interesting because Al can drink like 6, or used to before he gave it up, but he would drink like 6, 7 cups of coffee a day. And yet if he got sick one day, like, or not sick, well, I don't know, he would just one day, we'd not have coffee or something, and he'd be fine. He wouldn't get a headache, like he'd just be totally fine. Whereas I have religiously like 2 cups of coffee a day, 1 in the morning and maybe 1 later in the afternoon. But if I don't have my coffee by like 11 o'clock in the morning, I can
raging biatch.
Like I can't even see my headache is so bad. I'm like, how is this possible? But I could drink like a pot of coffee at 10 o'clock at night and immediately fall asleep and sleep like a baby all night long.
I have coffee at 8 o'clock and I'm like this at 3 in the morning.
So we're trying to figure out this, like, how could it be so different? Is it just beliefs and all this stuff? And then I learned about this gene. And so there are these people called fast metabolizers. And it's like if the gene is like A2 instead of A1, and then there's slow metabolizers. And it's the coolest thing. And we just had genetic testing done. And I have this fast metabolizing caffeine gene in me. My father does too.
She's actually a waste of caffeine because she just metabolizes it.
It's so crazy. It's like the difference between, it's like going into 2 different systems. So in my body, in fast metabolizers, the caffeine hits you in like 15 minutes and it only really does anything for you for about 45 minutes. And then it just sort of peters out because you metabolize it so fast. It really supports like athletic performance and all this kind of stuff. And you can actually drink more of it because your body metabolizes it so easily. And it doesn't do as much, any of the damage that it does. And it doesn't create cortisol the same way, all this kind of stuff. Whereas slow metabolizers, who sadly are a bigger part of the, and I don't ever get like shaky. I could drink again, like I could drink a vat of it and my hands never shake. I don't get agitated or anxious or anything. Slow metabolizers, it has this lifespan of like 4 to 6 hours, and it really affects the nervous system. It doesn't actually give them a physical boost, but it gives you a mental boost. It directs it differently. And that whole thing about the headache. So fast metabolizers, because they get their body gets such a big thing, will have these headaches. Whereas slow metabolizers, because their body deals with it so slowly, don't actually get very strong withdrawal symptoms. Like it's just this fascinating thing. And we're actually different. Like it's genetically, it's crazy. Anyway.
And you used to ridicule me.
Sorry, guys. That was really exciting.
That was fun. Yeah, you were excited.
I just finished my coffee 15 minutes ago.
Yeah. Bam!
Yeah, so we may dip into nutrition, but just a little bit. And if we have time, I won't promise it, but it's interesting. If we don't do it then, we'll just do it over lunch with it. But then we are going to go into the realms of possibility. So we are going to go into the weird stuff, but just a little bit. We're going to go into this whole concept of, light particles being both particle and wave. We're going to look at the idea of, waves of possibility actually being that you need a conscious observer in order for anything to be real. We're going to go into that area. And the reason we're going to go there is not so that you suddenly become, really well-versed in quantum physics and the quantum realm and everything else, simply that you have a different way of understanding what we're doing when we're doing things like timeline therapy, and when we're doing things that actually go back and alter memories from the past, that we're actually changing these waves of possibility that create a certain choice and then create a range and a limited possibility in the future. We're going to just give you enough so that you can sort of put it into this different frame of when you go back and when you release and you let go. And yeah, Schrodinger's cat. Yeah, that's what we're doing. So that you can actually recognize that when you change the future, which only exists now in the realm of your mind, right? When you actually select a different wave of possibility, that you open up a whole different range of possibilities for your future. And so it's really, really cool. Even when you just sort of get, I will tell you, when I first heard this stuff 8 or 9 years ago, it made very little sense, only that it seemed very weird and I couldn't understand why it would ever, contribute to anything that I did. But over time, it really has helped to understand at a really deep level what's possible. And I would say more than once, it's really allowed me to, I don't know, to be better at what I do. It's worth learning about.
You had a hard time saying that you were good at what you do, didn't you?
I don't know. Anyway, we'll get into it then, not now. But that will be fairly brief. And then we're going to go, that brings us into then like neuroplasticity, Dispenza's work. This is when we're really going to start looking at the way that you project your future, the way that you imagine your future self really is how you create the future self, whether it is in the realm of health or success or relationship or, you know, anything else in the world. And so we're going to dive into neuroplasticity and ideas of the self and in regards to healing and health.
So let me just tell you a quick story, and then we'll go to question and answer. And some of you know this story, but I always feel it's worthwhile telling again because I think it's a story that's near and dear to me, but it's of personal triumph, and it speaks to these 5 pillars of healing. My oldest son, Andrew, at 18 years old, was like a physical phenom in the field, in the sport of field hockey. He was the starting forward for the Canadian men's national team. He was destined to go to Rio, and he went skiing, and in a freak skiing accident, he fell off of what's called a cat track, a pathway, and down and landed on his head. Now, he had a helmet on, but he was knocked unconscious. And at Whistler, where he was skiing, there's often doctors skiing, and they sign in, please, and they sign in, and they're available on the hill for emergencies. And so the first doctor to get to my son was a thoracic surgeon. So I'm in the hospital. So the thoracic surgeon gets to him, they test him, and the thoracic surgeon described to me later that Andrew was persistently unconscious. He would not respond to light, to touch, or sound. And he scored as low as you can get on the Glasgow Coma scale. For those of you who know it, it's a scale of 1 to 5. The lowest score you can get is 3. They airlifted him off the mountain and into Vancouver General Hospital. They did a scan of his brain, and he had 3 small bleeds, which they couldn't assist with. They weren't big enough to drain or do anything. So, and that happened at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon at Whistler. I found out about it at about 1:30 Whistler time, 4:30 Ontario time, and somehow I was in his hospital room at 2 a.m. in Vancouver from Toronto that night. I don't remember leaving Guelph, going to the airport and flying to Vancouver. I just remember being in the hospital room. I knew I flew. So that began a journey. Andrew was unconscious for 30 hours. When he woke up, he had motor damage all down his right side. He has broken his first rib, which is almost impossible to break. He couldn't shake your hand. He couldn't squeeze anymore, and he dragged his right leg when he walked. He had post-traumatic amnesia for 12 days, meaning he could not make a memory for 12 days. And every day the prognosis from the staff at the hospital was, it's up to Andrew now. It's up to Andrew. So on about day 4, Andrew wasn't sleeping. So I reached out to a friend of mine, Paul Carson, and Bruce Carson. Paul had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, another one of the people that Tara talks about, a non-smoker. And when he went to Texas to the leading lung cancer oncology center, and they told him get his affairs in order, he said, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to assemble a team to fight the cancer. And he went into the realm of energy healing. And he assembled a group of energy healers around him, and he had traditional medicine. A year after his diagnosis, Paul Carson won the Masters Ski Slalom Championships in Sun Valley, Idaho. A year after he was told, get your affairs in order, and he's healthy and vibrant today. So I reached out to them, and they found energy healers. So I brought an energy healer, think about this, into a neuro ward at a major hospital. And this lady's across the bed, and she's doing whatever energy healers do, right? So now we're in level 2. And she's doing it, and all of a sudden Andrew inhaled this big inhale. He held it. I thought he was going to explode, and then he exhaled, he fell asleep, and he slept for 6 hours. And from that point on, he slept. She gave him 2 other sessions in the hospital. Don't ask me what she did. I don't know. Simultaneously, we took over his diet. He never ate hospital food. His mom started running a gauntlet of kale, spinach, oily, deep water fish. And so he never saw hospital food. I went to the local sports store. I found an article that said branched chain amino acids are really helpful for rebuilding brains. So I jacked them full of omega-3, omega-6, every oil known to man to help brain elasticity, plus branch chain amino acids. So we changed his diet. And then 3 groups came that came from nowhere. I put out a message to the universe. So often when bad things happen to people, they become reclusive, right? You know, they sink within themselves. I reached out to everybody I knew. I had a fairly big Rolodex at the time. I said, my son, you know him, he's hurt, please send positive wishes. And they just started coming in. And then the church where we lived was a Baptist church with 2,500 active parishioners. They asked if they could pray daily for Andrew. I said, yeah, bring it, please. So they started praying. Andrew was really well known in the community we lived in. And then one of his teammates, they were really devoted Catholics and belonged to a massive parish in Vancouver. And they said, can we pray for him every day? I said, yeah. And they said, you need to know that he will feel this. And I said, yeah, whatever, bring it. And then the last group was a group of friends of mine that go to Napa Valley and meditate. And on one day they meditated collectively, 50 of them for 2 hours. And I had this vision of this ray of light coming from Napa Valley into his hospital room, right? April 12th. So he got injured on February 1st. April 12th, he's having his exit interview from the hospital, being released on his own recognizance, driver's license in hand, all right? And the neurosurgeon and her team, she said, I've looked at his file. My team and I reviewed it 3 times because we've never, ever released anybody with a diagnosis and a prognosis as bad as Andrew's in this time frame, ever. So I don't know how he healed. I just know he healed, and he healed fabulously. He rejoined the Olympic team for a little bit. He just finished his master's degree in kinesiology at 26. So that is sort of a motivation for me about the possibility. And the last thing I'll share was when my daughter broke her leg. She was 8 years old, and I was in Uganda. I wasn't at home, and I got the phone call. I was staying at a guest house. There was about 20 missionaries staying in the house. And that night I was really distraught. And Emma was going into surgery in Vancouver. It was almost a 6-hour surgery. And they said, can we pray for your daughter? I said, please. And so they prayed for about 90 minutes. And when Emma came out of surgery, she never had another painkiller. She never took another painkiller. Broken femur, 2 rods put in her leg, came out of surgery beautifully, never had a painkiller. Did they impact that? I don't know, but I got to believe it had some impact. I'm going to choose to believe it. And so those are my motivations for sharing what we know and living vicariously through Tara's studies of integrative medicine. So ask questions. No, there's silence.
Yeah.
Ask questions. Turn on your microphones. Got a bunch of naturopaths on board here tonight.
My plan is Master Prac in 2022. Is this still the same plan for then, or is that too far to go?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It will be. And hopefully, there will be additions, hopefully. The reason we're telling you this is because we have extracted this from the master practitioner. So I don't know if we said that at the front end or if you guys heard about that, but what we have done, because it's so different from what other master practitioner courses include, and this is true of master practitioner. The NLP practitioner course is pretty standard. No matter which school you go to, anywhere, you're going to learn the same sort of foundational stuff. Then when it gets to the master practitioner level, every school has a lot of different stuff that they bring in, and they start, sort of going into their own areas of interest and specialty and all that kind of stuff. And so this is where we've gone. And like I said, we don't, you could go to a master practitioner with someone like John Grinder, and you would probably be in a room full of CEOs. Right? You'd be in a room full of people that are using this stuff to accelerate themselves in the corporate world or in leadership roles. Or
Bandler's master practice called human performance engineering.
Right. Okay.
You just picture where that goes.
Yeah. So there's lots of, and we know people. I mean, I was amazed, the first time that I ran into other NLP practitioners who had attended. These are people who've been doing this for, their whole lives, and they're really well known, and they've maybe done 6 or 7 different master practitioner courses with different people, right? That they just keep, I didn't even realize that was sort of like a thing. They said, where'd you do yours? I said, with Ted James. And they were like, and? I was like, what? We do more than one?
I've done 2.
So this is what we've done. And because this particular aspect of it, we have some people who are already master practitioner trained or are trainers who are interested in this, but don't, of course, want to sign up for the whole 14 days again because they've done very similar things. So we are offering just these 3 days. So we're charging like $500 a day. If you wanted to come for these 3 days, then that is just only this part of the master practitioner is something where we're going to open it up to a wider audience, and it's available to anyone that wants to do that. And then there's 2, good night, guys. Good luck, Dan. And then there's going to be 2 days after this where people are doing breakthroughs. So our master practitioners will be doing breakthroughs on each other and likely in a healing modality. And so if you are interested in doing that, we're also going to have the option that you could actually hang around, and with what you've learned in the 3 days plus your previous skills, you could hang around and do a breakthrough on someone and have a healing breakthrough done on yourself. That's an option, and I don't know what we charge for that, but it will be something, additional to that. So that's an option. So just know that is a possibility for you guys. And yes, Tanya, absolutely.
2022
we'll be doing a master. We'll do them once a year.
We're actually going to back off the number of pracs we do starting in the fall. I'm only going to teach 2 practitioners, 2 paces every year, and then 1 master prac. Since COVID, we've been running. I've trained every week and every weekend since COVID started to do what we did. But we're going to go to a more select. Tara and I's passion is to coach coaches, right? To help share knowledge with coaches, people who want to make a difference in other people's lives. And that's why our master prac looks like it does. Tad James and some other trainers, they teach trainers. So they're training people to become trainers. Their whole MO is to get you in master prac for you sign up for their trainer's course. We don't have a trainer's course, where our goal is to just share as much knowledge about healing as we can. That's where our influence is.
Yeah, it is. So
this one will be a healing breakthrough. It'll be specifically designed at healing something as opposed to a more generalist pace breakthrough.
Yeah, most people, if you have absolutely nothing wrong with you, if you are a walking specimen with nothing to work on in the healing capacity, then
piss off.
Then what are you doing here?
That was so much fun to say. That was healing.
But then we'll deal with it at the time. You can deal with some other, I don't know, whatever. We'll do, but I don't think that that's likely to happen. So yeah, we will get you real focused on healing capacity here. Okay.
It is interesting, right?
If there's any questions, put your
Somebody else.
Thanks, Dave. Is Dave gone? Dave's gone.
Oh
no, Dave's still here. Yeah.
I have a question. Oh.
Yeah, Catherine.
Yeah. So master prac in person, because I've got.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we'll have a few people probably that stream, but we'll have most of the group here in person.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yeah, and how are you going to do the Wim Hof ice bath over the internet? It's just not going to work.
Not going to do it in person either.
Oh, come on, guys.
Nope.
I'm actually
not a chance.
I'm actually going to teach from the ice bath. That's why I'm going to sit in the ice bath and teach.
Nope. And we'll continue doing the Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
Liz, you got a question?
Do you have any references or suggestions that you've run into that you think are good around neuronutrition?
Neuronutrition?
Because there's thousands of things out there, right?
Yeah.
There's Ayurvedic and just books on best health and anything.
Right? It's terrible. It's terrible going down the path of nutrition because it's just, Tanya
garbage out.
Is Allison here? Tara is here?
Yeah.
I don't know, the naturopaths are
Tanya's
here.
here.
And Tanya's here. They're the right ones to go to. The specific aspect of like neuronutrition, Dr. Amen is really, really, really good at identifying, I mean, you guys that are in the States might not love him because I don't, I know he's sort of like got a television show or something, but he does also have really, really good information. He does so many SPECT scans, right? So a guy like Dr. Amen, who is looking at the brain, and he looks at the brain in motion, which is so much more interesting than people, cool, awesome, than people who are doing static scans of the brain. Right. So because these SPECT scans actually watch the brain in motion, and he's specifically looking at like all of these conditions where the brain is such a contributor for specific illnesses and all that kind of stuff. He has done a lot of research and a lot of testing around nutrition and how it affects the brain. So he has a lot of suggestions. He's written a few books, but I've actually done a full course with Dr. Amen.
Dr. Gabby, did you say Gabby? The guy who got us on.
Gaby. Yeah. So it's more about like making sure that you know specifically the signs of ill health that you have, right? So recognizing that if fatigue is like lack of energy is really a thing going on in combination with, X, Y, and B, that there is a way to address that nutritionally that's going to directly affect the neuro health of your brain, right? Your neuro health. And that's where he's really good. That's where it's really interesting to realize that we have so much depletion going on. And while the body is a really, it's sort of, I don't know, easy is the wrong word because I don't know any of this stuff, but like, I don't know, if your nails are chipping or something, Tanya could probably easily tell you what like vitamins and stuff that you need to like make that work. But because our brains are the only part of our body that we don't actually look at to diagnose, right? So everything else, you see something or you get a vivid description of what's going on anatomically. With the brain, when somebody gets diagnosed with depression, there are about 1,000 different things that could contribute to why that person is depressed, and yet there are pharmaceutical recommendations. And truly, I mean, I don't say this with any disrespect, but psychologists and psychiatrists it's like throwing darts in the dark. Like, hey, let's try this one. It'll make your serotonin, production a lot higher. Let's see if that works. Let's see if like this supplement, like whatever.
My one client, the doctor gave her 3 prescriptions, said try one. If it doesn't work, try the next. If it doesn't work, try the third.
Because how do they know? I mean, that is such a complex machine up there. And so what neuronutrition is about is coming from a guy who is looking at the brain and says, okay, if this is what you're dealing with, if you have a hard time regulating your mood nutritionally, here are the things that you want to consider doing before you do anything else. And that in combination with doing all of the other stuff, right? Making sure you're addressing the mental and emotional stuff is really, really, really important. And I think that they all need to be addressed. Yeah, good. Dr. Gabby, I forget his name, but Dr. Gaby is his name.
Gabi.
There's a woman, if you guys are interested, Dr. Berkson is, she has a podcast. I think it's called like Dr. Berkson's Best Health. And that is a fantastic podcast to listen to. She brings on a lot of these people who are just like, infinite sources of information in this regard. She's a hormone specialist herself, but she's a doctor. Anyway, yeah. So Liz, I know that's not very helpful, but Dr. Amen's book, certainly, he has a whole book on neuronutrition.
Can you spell his last name?
Amen.
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 You got it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Home, James?
Yeah. Ashley, is that it? Or Ashley, you putting up your hand or you just saying goodbye?
Yeah, no, I have some questions, Alan. Thanks.
Okay.
So my 2 questions, okay, I'll start with this. So at this training focused on healing, there has been so much conflicting evidence that I've encountered with nutrition. So for example, some people are like praising the carnivore diet, and other people are saying that, oh, nutrition is so important and you're supposed to vary your diet. So I'm curious if y'all might be putting some of these people in conversation, like Dr. Kelly Brogan, who's all about nutrition, versus the German New Medicine approach, where Dr. Melissa Sell sometimes says, well, at least once she has said that nutrition not that it doesn't matter, but it's not nearly as important as she thought it was when she was only in her chiropractic training prior to her German New Medicine studies.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I have a million things to say about that. You know what is hilarious?
Dr. Brogan gave up her license. She's so adamant about it.
Yeah. And Brogan also makes everyone eat meat, right? You cannot, I mean, you know this, Ashley, you can't do her work unless you're willing to eat red meat, which is interesting. And she sympathizes with it. You know, having been a vegetarian, she understands that thinking, but she really believes that it is an imperative that you have red meat, especially when you're clearing things up. Anyway, so yeah, you know, it's hilarious. I remember like diving into this, and I had this course sometime last year, and I was so excited because I was like, Alan, I know the answer now. Like the answer to nutrition is like definitely greens, beans, and berries. Like everything in the world will be healed if you just eat greens, you know, anything green, all the vegetables. Eat your beans and legumes, and berries are like the world's key to, and it was like the proof, the evidence out there is
as
like,
I'm drinking my morning shake full of kale, spinach, celery, and berries, and I go, no kidding.
Yeah. So, and like, it was just this like, I had just spent like weeks, you know, studying all this stuff, and the evidence was in like, bam, this is what it is. And then I was like, I got a day or two, and then I went to the next chapter in the same course, like the next, like part 2 of the same course. And they were like, okay, now we're going to go down the path of like eating protein, you know, purposefully and intentionally. And it was just like, now we're in keto, and now we're in like, you know, real keto, not the trendy keto, but like actually putting the body into a healing modality or a healing phase of ketosis. And, you know, and it was like, I almost fell apart just with this, like, what? I thought we had the answer. And then the evidence for that was so compelling. But here's the thing. Honestly, you know, I can't say this enough. This is not my area of expertise, blah, 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 blah. However, you know what is exactly the same? No matter which diet, no matter which approach to eating, the thing that they all consistently have, do not eat refined sugar. None of these diets include refined sugar. None of these diets include high levels of simple carbs. None of these diets have processed food as being even remotely digestible. And by and large, they all sort of back away from dairy as being an especially good source of kind of anything. Those things are pretty consistent. And I would say that if you take those out of your diet, right? Like if you take those things out of your diet, chances are now you're eating so close to the earth that probably whatever, you know, you might want to look at, I don't know, my guess is this is why the evidence is so good either way, is like if you're eating that close to the earth, your body is probably going to adapt to that being a good diet, whether it's meatful or meatless or legume-full or legume-less, unless you have allergies, right? Unless you've actually developed an allergy. But allergies, you know, I think that allergies are, like when we get into this placebo stuff, like seriously, there is a study, a really, really, really big study that had people that had kids
poison ivy,
and they told them, they said, you know, put your arms out. They all agreed to do this. They rubbed poison ivy on this arm, and then they rubbed just a regular leaf on this arm, and then they told them that it was the opposite. And more than half of the people blistered and got reactions on the arm from the the maple leaf, and not on the arm from the poison ivy.
Yeah.
So I mean, allergies are a thing, maybe, but do you know how many people have gluten allergies today? But do you know how many people have read about gluten allergies and gluten being intolerant? Like, if you don't believe that we have digested this idea of like,
nice use of words.
Gluten is see that?
That was good. You're good.
But this idea of like, I can't handle gluten, nobody can handle, you know, but healthy people, like, so you gotta be really careful in terms of like really what is going on up here and I do sort of lean a lot more toward the like, it's important that you don't put chemicals and shit, like, you know, sugar and chemicals are a bad idea. And
can I jump in? Can I jump in?
But besides that, I think probably it doesn't really matter that much so long as it's actual real food going into your body.
And chunk up for a minute. You know, what is the purpose of eating? And then what's your body going to do when all that stuff ends up in your intestinal tract? it's going to break it down using chemistry into fundamental elements. Nothing you put in your mouth gets used as is in any of your cells. It's going to get broken in. So what does your body really need? They call them the essential amino acids because they're essential. If you don't eat them, you don't get them. You don't make them. So you got to eat them. People say you need to eat protein. Well, no, you need essential amino acids. So if you chunk up and say for what purpose, if I can get all my amino acids from this source or that source, now I'm comparing two sources. Where's my camera? Here. Now I'm comparing two sources. If I want to become an efficiency expert, I'll say which ones are most bioavailable at the least expense to my body, right? And I don't care if it's eating meat or eating fish or eating veggies or eating whatever. If I look at what I need to run this thing, and then I pick the food that's the most effective and efficient, now it's working for me, and it's working for you. I don't think there will ever be the diet, right? There cannot be.
Yeah.
There cannot be.
Ashley, does that even come close to answering what you were asking?
Tara, it comes close. So here's my second shot. So particularly with GNM and carnivore, because, okay, so Michaela Peterson really is one of the big people who has made this popular. So her thing is that she was on all these pharmaceuticals to help with her infections. And that when she went on carnivore, all the infections went away. And I know that GNM talks about infection and how, like, the healing crisis and how to get through that mentally, so to speak. And so I guess that would be my question is, I'm testing the theory that carnivore is just avoiding solving our traumas through food. And if that would even be a good idea, like if GNM would be actually better to like work through infection than just going to carnivore.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that, obviously, but I do understand how important it is to remember about belief, right? So, Christian scientists who don't like medical Western medicine at all, or any medicine at all, like Christian scientists who will, like, if they have a child who needs a blood transfusion, they won't let it happen and all that kind of stuff. So what's really interesting is that when a Christian scientist does end up making the choice to go to the doctor, and then they do what the doctor tells them to do, they have this really, really, really high rate of healing. Success. Significantly outside the normal, whatever that is.
Range.
Yeah, range. Thank you. And what they figure is that if somebody has had a really strong belief against something, and then if whatever the imperative, the driver is for them to actually go seek the help that they believe will help them, the depth of that belief that it's going to help them is so much more powerful than somebody that just has a passing sort of like, well, yeah, the doctor will help and the doctor will give you medicine, right? So they have this skyrocketing record of being healed. And I think that in cases like this, where it's like, yeah, I've seen them too. I mean, I've watched both spectrums of this stuff and heard about it. And I think that when somebody makes a choice like that to go completely carnivore, I mean, the level of belief that they have that it's going to help and it's going to heal is probably so high that chances are they're going to heal, right? So whether or not it means that they're not really addressing the trauma, I don't know. Believing that your body has the capacity to heal is pretty friggin' resolving of things like trauma, which tend to live in the frame that you can't heal. So while it may be different, it's parallel, right? It's a lateral, it's the same concept. And so very often that's the case, right? So they didn't believe they could heal. Then they said something happens, they believe they can heal. And yeah, I think if you checked that person after, I think if you then spoke to them about their trauma, chances are that frame will have changed. That belief will have crossed over differently. And now they can organically and naturally cope with their trauma in the ways that time and all of the things do. So I mean that's my theory, that's my thinking, and I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
That's because the truth is you can get those stories on both sides. Some people go vegan and heal. Some people go carnivore and heal. Some people go, eat nothing but sticks and stones and they heal. Some people fast and heal, right? Like all the different ways. So it's got to be something different than the diet,
Thank you.
One of my clients had trauma really bad, and she had really bad IBS, and super athlete and eating a lot of roughage. And the one doctor told her, you got to get off all the roughage. You got to eat meat only. So when I met her, all she would eat was meat, raw meat for that matter, and salt. And we cleared her trauma and her IBS went away, but she can't give up the meat now. She's so she can't, she's crazy, right? So yeah, it's amazing the belief structure.
Yeah, and that, all that said, we are certainly we are the most magnesium deficient population that has ever existed, right? Because nothing has magnesium in it anymore because our soil is so ruined. So magnesium is important for the body. It's
Huge.
Probably one of the singular most determining factors of whether somebody can regulate their emotion and keep their serotonin receptors healthy and all that kind of stuff. Ooh, I just got dizzy. That was weird. Oh my gosh.
You need more magnesium.
That's hilarious. I'll say later. But what's really interesting is that, there are ways where you can ruin your health nutritionally. I just think that there are a lot of ways to stay in really good health nutritionally.
Again, I always go to first principles. It doesn't matter what I do. And so I always chunk up and say, okay, well, for what purpose? Why am I eating this? And what's the best, what do I intend to gain? If it's pleasure, that's fine. If it's nutrition, what do I need? How do I get? And Tara can attest, man, I have a shake in the morning that moderately disgusting, but pure health every morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I refuse to give up grains and legumes and beans. And I will eat bread until the day I die. And I'm 100% sure that I will remain healthy. Yeah, Alan won't.
We're cursing each other. Paul in Waterloo.
So doesn't say that, does it? No. Question about Bruce Lipton. So Tara, you mentioned the biology of belief a short while ago.
Yeah.
So my wife and I started watching his video on that recently, and she's got a master's in biology. I've got a science degree, so we just loved the whole conversation. When we went to go look for what was the book we could recommend to someone, we noticed that there's already 2 books afterwards, and the most recent one is The Honeymoon Effect.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that book?
Yeah.
Because I'm worried that the biology of belief is too sciencey for the person I want to recommend it to.
Well, Honeymoon Effect is literally all about the honeymoon effect.
It's about love.
It's about falling in love. It's about the chemistry of falling in love and why it doesn't last.
Okay. So that's not what I'm looking for.
No,
okay.
That one's great for romantic, for people dealing with relationship stuff. It's awesome. It's a great one, but it has nothing to do. It is not going to be helpful.
Okay, so the biology of belief that's the only book that he has.
It's very readable, right? It's science.
Have you read
it? Have I read it? No, my wife and I were watching his DVD presentation on it.
It's funny because you probably don't have a gauge anymore about what's readable, right? When you get to you can't remember, is this language actually, digestible for lay people and everything? But I think that it is. I think, we've recommended it to a lot of people who don't have any background in science, and they seem to be able to take it in. I mean, to what degree, I don't know, but I read it a long time ago when I had absolutely no science. Not only that, but I had a belief that I was terrible at math and science because all of my teachers told me so when I failed their courses. When I couldn't do it, I decided I was bad at it, right? It was, so, and then I undid those beliefs and, but yeah, no, I think it's biology of belief is a good one to recommend.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, thank you. Answered the question though. Perfect, thanks.
Yeah.
If you just want to confuse them, send them The Honeymoon Effect.
Yeah. I don't know the other one he's published though since. I can't remember.
What's the middle one? I don't know.
Yeah. But it's not as good. But he really nailed it with biology of belief. And I don't know that he's done a lot of auditory stuff, at stuff after that. But I think I don't know that he's a natural writer.
Yeah.
And I think that one was really his style.
The one in between is called An Introduction to Spontaneous Evolution.
Oh, okay. See, that's more along the lines of Greg Braden stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more, Greg Braden? That's more about we are divine creatures. We are not, we didn't come from the apes. But that's a whole other, we're not going down that path. Promise.
They're talking about going to 46
from 24 to 23 chromosomes.
pairs.
Truly,
Pairs.
this is another rabbit hole, but it is.
And the combination of two to create speech, which just happened overnight.
They're basically saying we did not, we said human beings as we are today suddenly appeared. There was no, and evolution has never been proven, right? It's still a theory. And so there is this whole, anyway, that's what that's about. Probably not what you're looking for. Yeah, it's interesting though.
Yeah, Greg Braden, the three amigos, they actually call them, are Dispenza, Braden, and Lipton. And Braden is a shaman chaser. Like, he's been everywhere that there's any shamanistic tradition in the world. And of course, Dispenza is a doctor of chiropractic and heavy on research. And then Bruce Lipton is a stem cell research gone totally spiritual.
Wild.
And it's like, it's crazy. It is wild. Right. Cool. All right, guys, it's coming in on 8:45. Any other questions before we call her a night?
I have a client question. I don't know.
Oh, sure. Why not?
Just before, Catherine, I just want to mention, because Deb's here, that for those of you, because there's a couple of you here that are going to be doing Master Prac, that we have Deb Workman is going to be assisting us on Master Prac.
From New Zealand.
From New Zealand. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
What's the question, Catherine?
There she is, waving at us.
Hey, Deb.
Thanks for coming tonight.
She's frozen.
So my question. Catherine, go ahead. Yeah. So my question is, I've got a business client. So it's two people that have been recommended by their boss. So they accepted it. I knew one was fully in, one was more skeptical. So it's been very interesting to do it in a business environment. This skeptical person, she is a really fascinating person, and I hope, I'll find out. So releasing the negative, the big fives, and basically I get some very interesting learnings. Like, she's still thinking. To get her out of her thinking mind is brutal with this particular person, but she still does it. Core transformations go great. She does the core transformation, loves it. So it's like, okay, good. Guilt, nothing. There was no learnings, no nothing. So I just kept going through the process, hoping that at some unconscious level, I'm clearing it. I do no traumas on the timeline. She's 42. The only spot that she hits is 33, and it was an SEE with her mom, and so cleared that. And what I've been doing with her is a lot of core transformation, and just working with her. The interesting thing is getting her to think alternatively. So jarring these absolutes that she lives in, and then when I find a little break, that then do a core transformation. Interestingly enough, decisions seems to be working. Like she's responding to her limiting decisions. So I've been progressing, even though I'm not sure about the negative stuff, but she just doesn't seem to have it. And yet her parents were both, came over from Malaysia on the boat. Like there's stuff that happened, but she doesn't seem to hold on to any of the negative. At least that's what she presents with. So what does that
TPI say about past negative?
It's not very bad. Like it's just minor.
Well, maybe it's not, maybe.
Okay.
It's quite possible that it's not. I mean,
she doesn't do it. She doesn't do negative emotions.
When you listen to Gabor Mate talk about the impact of parenting in the first 7 years, and if you know Southeast Asian culture, Malaysian culture, and how they parent, she may not have any of the normal things you'd find in a screwed up white family in Canada.
Yeah, like sign me up. And
Yeah.
we laugh through so much stuff.
I think it's not your job to uncover things that she's not ready to uncover. So one of two things is true. Either it's really not there. It is truly a resolved childhood, where there isn't a lot there, and cool, motor on, or it's completely repressed. She's totally messed up about it, and she is not yet prepared to address it. Yeah. Either way, you go with what, unless it was just really surface resistance, and then you have the different ways of sort of getting through that, but you've already, done that. So yeah, either way, you need to let the system guide, right? So as long as you're able to move forward and you're getting, good results with what you're doing and you're noticing shifts, then that's what you do. Who knows, she may come back to you in 2 years and be ready then to deal with some of this stuff, or it truly isn't there. So.
And clearly Tad and Wyatt ran into that very situation when they wrote the scripts, because it says, if there are new learnings, go to step 3. If there are no new learnings, go to step 3. Right? It says it right in the script. So
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, I was just so I'm thinking, oh God, I'm not following the rules. I'm running with scissors. I'm running with scissors.
So terrified and exhilarating. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Running amok.
Keep going forward. Yeah, cool.
And the cool thing is, Catherine, if let's say towards in step 4 or something, the lights all come on and she starts to emote more, you can go back and clear some of those fast. You can go back and clear 4 or 5 emotions fast, if it's appropriate. If not, I'm with Tara. Calibrate on results. Is she getting the results you wanted?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Catherine, is her past positive right on, or is it real high?
No, it's not real high. There's no extreme. If anything, it's her hedonism is too low. Because she's very well, and we sorted that out. She's got, I'm the only one. So if I have to do it all, which is causing her to win. And I'm getting she's shifting on that really, really fast.
Yeah, this is the one when we talked about,
like
right?
that.
Yeah. Okay. Because if you get really low past negative and then the past positive is way above on the TPI, then you've got somebody with rose-colored glasses, almost assuredly, somebody that just can't handle admitting that can't deal with it. If the past positive is good, I would say it's probably real. Look at Sue's picture behind her. Sue, we have that cat picture behind you. It's front and center in our office. I love it.
All right, other questions. Liz, did you have your hand up a minute ago? Did I see your hand up?
Lee.
No? Okay.
No, just managing the pain.
Oh,
I've got an injury we could heal.
Yeah, you could come be a guinea pig. We could do like a live healing.
In the ice bath doing Wim Hof.
This whatever. I mean, woo me, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to Paul.
6 minutes in the ice bath, you won't even feel your hand.
Yeah.
Oh, see, there you go. I'll just cut it off.
Yeah, easily. Lee, you've got something, yeah?
Yeah. No, thank you for tonight. It was amazing. I'm very excited. I'm in for this. I just haven't signed up yet, but I am totally in. So cool. Thank you. I have 2 things. One, I was working with a client where I did hypnosis, and I normally record it on my phone on voice memo and send it to them. And this client wasn't able because I don't know what format it is, but I just wondered if anyone else knew of a way to record that's simple, that doesn't require, I like sending the hypnosis to them so they have it. And I just wondered if there was a simple app or whatever.
Are you doing the sessions over Zoom?
Yeah.
Zoom has an audio track only. If you go in the Zoom file, it has the video track, but it has audio only, and it has a transcript.
And it's really good quality. So
the audio track's perfect.
Oh, okay. So I could just record that part
and
then send it to her, and it's an MP3 or an MP4 or whatever.
MP4. Yeah. And they're perfect clarity.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you. I knew you guys would have a quick, because I'm figuring that out. And then I had a thing to share. and I can always send it to Sam, but I was on a conference a couple of months ago, a tech conference, but there is a group of lawyers out, I think they're based out of Edmonton or somewhere out west anyways, called the Good Lawyers. And they're charging a fraction of the price for people that need people to look over contracts, any kind of legal stuff that you need done. These guys, and they also have a promo code because they're all been lawyers, but now they're coming together to do this kind of online approach of legal stuff. So I just thought I'd let you guys know about that for new coaches. Yeah, I think it's thegoodlawyers.ca, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, that's great to know.
Yeah, I kept meaning to tell you guys.
Yeah.
And I forgot, so.
Can you drop it into Facebook group as well?
Okay, yep.
Oh my gosh, Ashley's gonna do nice stuff. Cool. Ashley, I'm excited. You'll have to call me as soon as when you're coming home.
Thanks.
I'd love to.
Then go find a Tony Robbins weekend and walk on fire. You'll have done it all.
Ashley, who's it with?
So I'm calling it a health and freedom conference. Some people are calling it a music festival.
I call it school. Some people call it circus. Yeah. Okay.
It's called Music in Sky, and yeah, they're having a bunch of speakers in like the mornings, afternoons, and then there's a bunch of music.
My gosh, it sounds wonderful. But how in the world, in Canada, we're still like, you can't do that kind of stuff here. We're still like.
You could in pods of 5, 2 meters apart each.
We can't even go to a restaurant because you're only allowed 4 at a table, and we have 5 in our family.
We went to go for Father's Day lunch. They said, how big's the party? I said, party of 5. And they said, well, you can only seat 4. I said, well, which kid are we going to throw it? Pick one. And the lady, her jaw dropped.
Yeah. Sorry, Ashley. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you guys are doing that again.
Yeah.
Cool.
Enjoy the ice bath.
Thank you.
All right.
I can't believe, Catherine, Paul, you guys have been around me for a year and you're still not into the cold bathing, cold everything.
Nope.
I did that.
With skis on.
Yeah.
What's that, Paul?
I did that. I think it was maybe about 15 or 20 years ago. I was doing a lot of hydrotherapy, and the alternating between hot and cold was really good to get circulation going, and it accelerated healing. So for me, I was doing that. I did that for several years in order to help accelerate just healing and promote good physical fitness and health. I just no, I'm good.
I'll just deteriorate right here where I sit. I'm not going in the cold. Well, it's goofy. I don't want to do my Wim Hof in the morning because there's no point in going, because I did it all winter outside, right? In the cold. And I'm thinking, but I think I've transmogrified it because he doesn't do the ice and the breathing at the same time.
Yeah.
So I've combined his techniques. I've got to separate them again.
Made it like faster.
Yeah.
More efficient and
faster. It's not about the speed, Tara. It's about the effectiveness.
We once had a woman that I laugh at. She's a naturopath and she used to work at our center, and she's hilarious and fabulous, brilliant, and everything else. But just like to the point, like she did not fuck around. This is a woman that was just like so to the point. And she took our NLP course, and much like Al appreciates, efficiency and effectiveness, she learns all this stuff, and she comes up to us after and she goes, couldn't you just do all 5 emotions at once? Make it a lot faster.
All right.
Is that okay with your unconscious mind to clear? Anger, satisfaction, fear, guilt, and being aware of it consciously. So funny. I don't know. Try it. See what happens. Let us know. Funny.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right, guys. Any more questions? We're going to call it a night. We've got 3 little kids somewhere just behind that wall.
Yeah, maybe still.
Maybe.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
So much.
See you guys all soon.
All right.
Good night. Thank you.
Good
You're
night.
welcome. Good night, everybody.
See ya. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.